back to order, if we could. And I'd like to remind the public that we would like to confine your questions and comments to 2 minutes, please. Otherwise, we will be here until midnight.
And you have other opportunities.
And in answer to one of the issues that was raised earlier, the clerk is going to read us the response of the wastewater superintendent, Amy Lowell, to the query about hooking up additional flow.
Okay, so the specific question was if 40B Helmets 28 units as proposed were connected, would that stop any yet to be connected properties from connecting to the Little Pond sewer service area? Response, no. There was a modest contingency in the projected wastewater flow for the service area. This proposed project would use some of that contingency, but would not prevent other existing properties / developments within the service area from connecting as planned. And that was from Amy Lowell.
Okay, so that's addressing that. Now, there's a gentleman in the far back there that's had his hand up for some time, so.
Thank you. Larry Backman, Reynolds Road, Precinct 3. I'm a homeowner in the Little Pond Sewer area and have been a homeowner for 15 years. I have two questions or concerns for the board. The first is pedestrian traffic as it exits this development and heads on to Worcester Court. I do not believe there's sidewalks in that area. And as someone who's been running on these roads for 15 years, I can tell you they're dangerous. So if you're going to build this, you have to address the pedestrians getting to where they're going to get to. The second concern that I have is bigger, and it concerns Little Pond itself. This town spent a lot of money, a lot of time. As a taxpayer, as a landowner, as a property owner, we've spent a lot of money with our septic system. I don't understand how you can put 28 properties into this tight space and not affect the headwaters of Little Pond. I don't expect an answer, but it's a concern of mine that I hope will be addressed in the future. Thank you.
Okay. You do understand all of these homes are hooked up to the sewer, so none of the wastewater is going into Little Pond.
I understand that. I also understand runoff. I live here, I've lived here, and lovely lawns come with a price. Lovely landscaping.
Okay, so you raise the question about fertilizer, which is actually fertilizer use. And would there be any...
And lot coverage and all those other things that, I live with, everyone else in my neighborhood lives with.
Okay. So would there be any restrictions on fertilizer use, for example?
I mean, we haven't even thought about it.
Again, if you want to comment,
It's
please.
something we can talk about. I just was going to address the sidewalk. There is a sidewalk on the east side of Worcester Court, and we are proposing a crosswalk from the sidewalk connection to Worcester Court across the street.
Okay? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Mike Hatch, and I live at 64 Alma Road. And out of concern for all the other folks that are here tonight, I have a few questions, but I believe I'd like to ask two at this point that hopefully I can get done in the 2 minutes. And the first one is, it was referenced, I believe by the engineer, I'm sorry, I forget your name, that there's
Brandon.
what is described in the plan as a stone trench that runs all the way right off of the property line, right up through the beginning of Alma, all the way to the end where I believe the retention basin is. I'd like to know the purpose of that trench. Is it there just to capture rain, or is it there to get the rain and move it all the way down to the infiltration system? I don't recall whether that was mentioned or not. And the second is, I'd like a little bit of clarification on this parking. I believe the chair referenced that the permit was calling for 56 parking spaces, which would be 2 per unit. Yet I've heard that the driveways can hold 4 cars. So is it that the driveway can, under certain circumstances, if the cars are all small, hold 4? Is it a non-conforming 2-car driveway? Exactly what it is, because I can tell you my concern is that houses or homes with 3 people or more usually have 3.1 cars. I'm sorry, I got that reversed. Houses with 3.1 people or more have at least 3 cars. So if those driveways can't handle 2 cars, then there's going to be cars on a consistent basis, or at least my feeling is on a consistent basis, on the street. And the street's narrow. If there are going to be cars there consistently, I think it poses a safety problem. And again, you know, it all goes back to what are those driveways? You asked for 56, so that tells me it's 2, but yet you say it can fit twice as many. So at this time, that's it for my 2 questions. After everybody else has theirs answered, I would like to come back and ask another one, but thank you.
Okay. Well, there'll be, and let me just say that this hearing is undoubtedly going to be continued, so there will be opportunities to address some of these issues again.
Just quickly address the stone trench along the neighbors, the property line between the Alma Road neighbors is actually more to capture runoff that's draining from the backyards of the Alma Roads onto the site today. So in order to not create a low spot where it could get puddling back
So
there.
just point on the plan to where you, and it runs the full extent of that property line?
So the stone trench runs, we ran it, to be conservative, the entire backyard. So basically, the area, the last, I think it's 3 feet wide underneath the fence would be a stone trench that would be sized to infiltrate any stormwater in the backyard, and that's assuming that no stormwater is just infiltrating into the lawn. But in this area, from lots 27 to about 22, 23, the properties on Alma Road, the way the existing topography runs into our site, so it's actually to serve both purposes, to capture runoff flowing onto our site and to prevent any possible runoff from going towards the neighbors.
So currently that runoff goes on to the forested buffer?
Correct, it goes onto our site. And then the question on the driveways, every driveway is at least 36 feet long and I think it's 20 feet wide, which is larger than 4 standard parking spaces. So each driveway can accommodate at least 4 cars. Some of the ones down the end can accommodate more. And then obviously, if you have a 1-car garage, you could accommodate 1 more car.
Could you just repeat the width on that? 20?
I believe it's 20 feet. Let me just confirm. 20 or 18. 18 would be 2
So,
standard
but
parking.
36 by 18?
Yeah.
There's no standard parking through the chair, 10 by 18,
9 by 18.
Nine.
or 9 by 8, that's close enough.
9 by 18.
That's commercial required parking.
All right, so. Yes, sir. Again, yeah, come to the podium and state your name for the record.
Thank you. I'm Grant Walker, 71 Philadelphia Street, precinct number 3, and I have a follow-up question on the drainage, the water drainage. Am I correct in understanding that each lot will drain to the street of the village or the development? Towards that street that runs right through the middle of it?
Okay, let's see what the engineers have to say. They'll give you the answer.
They keep telling us to speak into the mic, so the way it's designed currently, all the runoff from the driveways in the front yards, basically there's a ridge line that almost runs down the center of the house. So you can picture that, all the driveways in the front yards drain towards the street. And that's, the 2 underground infiltration basins are sized to accommodate all that runoff.
And in addition to that, all the rain on the roof that comes into the gutters and down the downspouts, that'll go also towards that center street?
Okay,
No, there's individual dry wells for each house, located mostly under the driveway.
And where does all the water end up? Is it all going to be going towards Little Pond
let's see.
and all those drainage systems?
Assumedly, yes, the groundwater flow would be towards Little Pond.
And finally, if I may, have you, well, how should I word this? is Little Pond going to be able to take that amount of discharge?
There's no additional water going to Little Pond. I mean, we're not creating rain with the development, so it's just the way that it hits the ground. It's more concentrated, obviously, on an impervious surface. So it's captured, treated to the state standards, infiltrated above the state standards, like I said, up to the 100-year storm. But all the water that's falling on the site today will continue to fall. It's just how it gets into the ground that's basically being changed by the development.
Is there any, I have a follow-up question now, if I could. Is there any difference in your understanding in terms of how that input, which includes, you know, runoff, nutrients carried in the rain, perhaps fertilizers, is processed in a deep infiltration basin versus going through natural soil and a vegetated riparian zone?
There are differences in the treatment of different, media that the stormwater would go through. We are treating to the Mass DEP standards for stormwater quality, for TSS, nutrients, things like that.
So,
Question through.
I guess the question is, would you expect that the amount of nutrients delivered post-development would be different than what's currently entering?
It could be different, yes.
In what direction?
We haven't done a nutrient loading study, no. So,
In what direction, do you know, idea? Less, more, the same? You said it's gonna be different, so it's
depends
either
on the
less or
usage.
more.
It depends on the wildlife that's out there now, it depends on fertilizers that are used, it depends on, obviously, there's no septic system, so that's a pro. I mean, it depends on a lot of things. Without having done a lot of analysis on that yet, I can't speak to it.
Okay, well, I guess maybe, speaking for myself anyway, it'd be nice to see some analysis of that.
Clarifying question?
Yep.
I think you have to comply with the stormwater management plan of the town, which has to comply with, I mean, even though it's not an NPDES permit, it's a subsurface permit that I think needs to comply. The other thing on checking the nutrients, you should check on the TMDL to see if stormwater was included in TMDL. It is not always included in the earlier TMDLs.
It's not our purview.
Okay, so let's,
Nitrogen.
Mr. Walker, right, had the floor, so let's continue.
Just to follow that up and finish this, I'm not an engineer, I got no background in engineering whatsoever, but if there's no structures and no road on the property now, and we have exactly the same amount of rain, but we have all those roofs and that paved street and those paved driveways, that seems to me to be delivering water to Little Pond a whole lot faster than now if there's just trees and wild vegetation or whatever. I would assume. So that
Well, so
concerns me.
we've asked for some clarification on that,
Yeah.
so I think that's a good question. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Edward Jalowick, 54 Alma Road. I want to start off just saying thank you, Board, for the service you give the community. You're here week after week, spend a lot of hours outside of meetings studying this stuff. The community owes you a debt and a gratitude for what you do, so thank you. The proposed development by Helmuth Circle LLC is in a coastal pond overlay district. Now, there are many issues that concern me. I'll try to skip those that have already been asked or addressed. The extreme density. And my figures are coming from their filing. They're requesting lot coverage, and they state 40% by buildings, 60% including building and pavement. There is a lack of open space and play areas in this development, as Mr. Foreman, you have addressed. Runoff. The developer is required to design and install systems to capture and retain all stormwater on the site. I believe the engineer mentioned a figure of 100-year average storm, 4 inches of water. Just in October, we had 6 inches of water in an 8-hour period. The neighborhood was underwater. And while the developer can't be required to alleviate the existing conditions, we must be careful that they do not exacerbate them. I would request that the board require an independent engineering expert evaluation of this proposal. as was done at the request of a board for the 40B on spring bars. An independent engineering firm looked at the proposal and said, whoops, there are problems, and corrections were made. So I think it's important that it be done here also. Environmental impacts, there's too many to get into tonight. I know the Concom will weigh in, but the site abuts a very critical habitat, an Atlantic white cedar swamp, vernal pool, coastal banks, and of course, Little Pond. Critical areas and habitats. I think someone has already stated that the town spent millions on sewering and roughly $3 million buying the site in back of this proposed development to protect that critical environment. Dense development in this area will endanger these resources. Neighborhood character was mentioned in the presentation, and they said about the size of lots all over Falmouth. The neighborhood is Alma Road. Direct abutters south of the site are 10 single-family homes on lots ranging in size from 8,843 square feet to 14,288. The smallest lot in this proposal is 3557. We could put 4 of these on the largest lot and 2 on the smallest. It is not in keeping with the neighborhood character by any stretch of the imagination. And it's also proposed as a 40B to address all the Falmouth housing issues. Based on patterns of use in the neighborhood, these will be primarily seasonal residents at a high cost. There will be 7 affordable, but if you build 28, you need to increase your affordable stock by 10% of that. And we're only gaining 7, so a net of 4. And there's nothing to prevent an asset-wealthy individual that has a moderate income from buying one of the affordable units. And then doing that as a seasonal residence, live there in the nice weather, and then head for your condo in Florida. Nothing in the law or the proposal would prevent that. Public safety's been addressed as far as the narrow road. The project is to be built in stages. This has not been mentioned yet, with no time frame specified. The landscaping plan appears to indicate the site would be clear-cut. All those existing trees and vegetation gone. The road would have to be the first major construction, and you now have a bare tract of land. Mud, dirt, dust. If the economy goes south, LLCs can disappear. It's a paper entity. There is nothing behind that except a piece of paper, and projects of this nature have gone bankrupt, and the towns are left with a scar on their landscape, and the neighbors deal with this disruption for a long, long time. So bonding should be required to ensure performance, and a specified timetable should be conditioned. The developer should not be allowed to extend this project over 2, 5, 10, 20 years while the neighbors put up with noise, dust, disruption, and the town has a scar. The fence needs to be specified, and the location, well, it won't be on the property line. Town bylaw allows it to be on the property line, but abutters will not tolerate trespassing to either build or maintain that. The dimensions of the setback and the material need to be specified, and also who's going to be responsible. Well, maybe the homeowners association. The grass over that infiltration bed, who's going to mow that, maintain it? There's a lot of issues with that. Mr. Netto, and this will be my last point, Mr. Netto addressed some of the issues, and Amy Lowell has responded to some of the questions about the sewering. The site is currently a grandfathered 7-lot subdivision with 7 sewer hookups assigned and the associated betterments. That's the financial side. Allowing 28 houses to hook up appears to be in conflict with the following, and this is from the flow neutral bylaw, Chapter 180, Part 3, Article 8. 180.59 talks about the allocation of flow for a parcel to another parcel, and it says as follows, and I quote directly, transferability in sewer service areas. The number of bedrooms or flow on any particular parcel of land cannot be sold, exchanged, or transferred, or otherwise used to benefit the number of bedrooms or flow on another parcel or another's right to a sewer connection. Amy has addressed the betterment cost. I'm questioning, and I think we need a legal opinion here, what is the right to another sewer connection. This bylaw says to me, no. If this precedent is set by this project, I, on my property of 14,288 square feet, could build 4 houses or some multi-story apartments and make a lot of money. In fact, I've had some studies done, and I could probably make $500,000 to $750,000. There are other large parcels in the sewer area where literally 50 to 100 homes or apartments could be built. It is a dangerous Pandora's box that this would open up. I thank you.
Okay.
You wanted to address some things, and I could too.
Hmm?
You wanted to.
Well, first of all, I might ask Peter to
Okay.
respond to the, or the applicant to respond to the issue of monitoring who gets affordable units, right? Because that was raised as, could anyone get an affordable unit?
You said something as to seasonal ownership.
If you're thinking of the question about somebody qualifying and going south for the, it can't happen. I mean, this has to be legally their primary residence. They have very strict review and application criteria, and they have to meet the no greater than 80% for the household area median income. And, you know, I'm not to say that if somebody honestly, legitimately meeting those income guidelines can go on a vacation for a few weeks, renting a place in Florida, that doesn't impinge upon the legality of their having this house as their primary residence. But beyond that, it's, you know, again, within the tests for income, it seems pretty far-fetched to think that they would be leaving for a summer home in Florida. I hope to in the near future, but a winter home, I should say, in Florida. But
The point being that that in order to buy one of these affordable units, you have to meet certain criteria,
Yes.
and that's vetted through a legal process and a monitoring
Right.
agent.
Lottery
absolutely,
agent.
there's a monitoring agent to make sure about that, as well as that affirmative fair housing marketing plan. So it's monitored by us, as well as conditions in the permit, as well as by Mass Housing.
I have a clarifying question.
What, Jerry,
Well, you've asked a question. I have a clarifying question on the stormwater. Usually, someone asked that this board hire an independent stormwater engineer. I'd like a clarifying question of whether the town engineer could do that, or we have to consider
No.
imposing additional requirement. I'm not saying I'm for or against it, but it's well within the capability of our town engineer to review the stormwater plans. These are straightforward surface water calculations. That's, whoever brought it up, I'm just asking, if the town engineer would do it, would you accept their calculations? And you
Well, I
could
don't think
review
it's up to the
No.
public. That's
No.
a decision of the board. This is not.
I agree,
Yes,
but
he
it-
asked
If the board feels that we would like additional consultant advice, we're entitled
asked for-
under
he's-
40B
he asked for
to
outside.
ask for it.
he asked for outside, and
asked for
I'm
outside.
asking for clarification.
Right.
Outside
Well,
could be
that's a
the town
discussion,
engineer.
No,
Jerry,
you can't.
for the board.
Okay, I guess I
All right.
disagree, but that's
If the
okay.
board would decide by majority vote that they would like that, then.
It would be outside independent.
Then we
Yeah.
can ask.
So it wouldn't be town engineer?
No, the town engineers have already weighed in on the project.
Right. Okay. All right, so, anyway, I hope that addresses the concern about just any old person coming in, you know, Warren Buffett and hiring, and buying an affordable unit and then trying to rent it or something. That's not gonna happen. Kim, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, not for the time being.
Let's see if there's others. Yeah. Happy to have the quiet period.
We could move the mic to him.
Okay, I made it. I'm Bob Hendricks. I live at 90 Alma Road. I'm a butter of this property. And my concern is this. I'm retired, as you can obviously see, and I would be looking at this fence 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year. I'm concerned about our ability to decide what the fence is going to look like. If it's an ugly fence, and look at the wrong side of it, and it's not being maintained, I'm not going to be very happy about that. And in fact, the implication would be that if I try to sell my property, and the fence is still there looking that way, it's going to decrease the value of the property. So I want to have some way of either the town or the abutters have the ability to decide what a good fence looks like for the area.
Okay. Certainly within our decision, we can ask for more specificity on that, and we can certainly ask for a maintenance plan as well.
Good, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Harriet Newton, Precinct 2. The situation that bothers me is this is a very dense project. Here are 21 houses that can be sold and rented for the summer, and that's just what's going to happen because I am in the real estate business, and the majority of the Heights properties right now are being purchased by people who rent them for the summer, most of the summer, and spend maybe May or September there themselves. So I think you're going to get a lot more traffic flow from those 21 houses than 4 cars or 5 cars. I think it's way too dense for the area. And it's the project is lovely, but just too big. And I do believe those 21 houses will be rented out. That's what most of the people in the Heights are doing. People come in, they buy them, they rent them out, they make money and use them off season. So that is what is going to happen.
Okay. Anyone else? Yep.
Greg Masmanian, for Miami Ave. I'm in the Heights. I do not abut the property. I just want to thank my neighbors for bringing up a number of different things in terms of density, environmental, good questions, and thanks for the board for helping us through. But mine centers around really a comment, not a question. Aesthetics. You know, what do we really have here? When I look at the picture and I look at aesthetically, how does it fit to the neighborhood? It doesn't fit very well. So I began to think about kind of economics. If I was the developer, how much money can I make on 7 homes versus 28? Gross margins, if you think about what the gross margins are on this property as it relates to 7 houses versus 28 units, the margin's like double. So you can make, let's say, 3.3 million based upon these selling prices versus maybe 1.5 million. I don't think it takes a genius to figure out. I'd rather make 3.3 million versus 1.5. But, you know, what do we wind up with in terms of the neighborhood, other than the comments that were already brought up? Aesthetically, it doesn't fit. I mean, it looks like row houses. So I think, in all fairness to us as taxpayers, and people who have to live there, it's just not a good fit. I don't see any place in the Heights that has anything like that. Thank you.
So I'd like not to have a lot of repetition, so if it's something new,
If I may, I'd like to recommend that the Falmouth Coastal Resilience Committee be allowed to weigh in on the project. I have no idea whether that was already done or not, but I think that would be a good idea. A 100-year storm, I presume, is based on what has happened in the past. I don't know if people concerned about coastal resilience are convinced that what will happen in the next 100 years will be a match for that. So that's a recommendation.
okay. Well, and, you know, anyone in the town is welcome, or any committee, welcome to comment. We, I guess under the 40B statute, we are the comprehensive permit granting authority, so, but we certainly want to take into account all input in making those decisions. If there's not presently, oh, there are a few, okay. And again, I'll say that this will not be the last hearing. People have brought up some good questions. We will try to get answers to some of these questions. There's more work to be done by the applicant to satisfy the board as to what the nature of this project really is, so.
Thank you. I'm Mark Stowe, and I represent my sister and myself. My sister, Sandra Stowe. We live at 115 Lucerne Avenue at the bottom of Alma Road at the corner. And we own our home there as well as the lot next to us, which is in the conservation area. So I think our key concerns in terms of the Zoning Board of Appeals would be the threat of flood. And I think Ed made a good point that just this last summer, we had cars underwater in downtown Falmouth with people standing on the roofs. So, you know, the 100-year storm thing sounds good, but it does happen. And it seems like, he mentioned 8-point-some-odd inches of rain. We only had 5, I think, or 6 inches that occurred this past summer. So we currently get a river of water coming down our driveway from Alma Road. So a concern that I have, and I know it's all wonderful that there's this drainage system and it's underground, and that'll all be wonderful for the first 5 years. And then a homeowners association will take over monitoring that, supposedly. But what assurance do we have that if this fails and we're flooded, when we bought the home 3 years ago, we had a foot of standing water next to our garage door at the bottom of the hill. It goes right into a little pond from there through our backyard. So I guess, you know, we put in drainage ourselves. There are also chemicals, you know, you're talking about fertilizer, homes, asphalt, building materials include chemicals that leach into the conservation area. So it's not just fertilizer, it's salt that people may put in their driveways, it's salt that could go on the sidewalks, it's chemicals from the roofs. We're not allowed to cut a tree within 100 feet of the pond. And we're talking about clear cutting a forest. It's not just little trees here and there, we're talking about a forest of trees in this 5 acres. So there's many concerns that we have, and it's hard to really go through everything here. I wrote 2 long letters. But I do wonder, you mentioned that you're filing for a state wetlands permit, but there are also laws that relate to the Department of Environmental Protection for the state under 310 CMR. And there are 2 specific areas that I think are directly affected that may be in conflict with this project. And that would be CMR number 12, which is coastal wetlands orders, and CMR number 10, which are wetlands protections. So I would request, I guess, that the board assume the responsibility of ensuring that those laws are consistent and not violated with this project. Because it's one thing for a 40B project, but that cannot conflict with other state regulations and laws. It can't override them just because we want to put housing somewhere. You know, when I look at this project, I think it's the location. No one has a problem with affordable housing. I really don't think that we're snobs in that sense, but it has a lot to do with the investment that we've made in Little Pond. It was the most polluted estuary in the area, and it's been cleaned up through a lot of money and effort. And there are state statutes that protect the wetlands, and this is right up to them. So that I think is a huge concern, not to mention the impact on the wildlife. You know, we have the turtles on our property, so that we sent the pictures in our letters of the turtles that live on the lot next to us right at the bottom of this development. So that's another issue, not to mention that clear cutting a forest, which is a nesting ground for all the natural, you know, local birds and waterfowl, is another factor that no one's even thinking about. So, you know, again, we can't cut a tree within 100 foot of the bay. And I just don't understand the idea of clear cutting an entire forest to cram in this number of homes. I mean, I don't think anybody, again, as a repeat, no one had a problem with 7 home sites because of the amount of land that there was there for that. So I guess from my perspective, in 10 years, when I'm getting flooded out because of a failed drainage system in a 100-year storm, what's my recourse? What are the guarantees that we have as recourse if that's not maintained?
Okay, so ensuring that there's some, you know, the homeowners agreement includes appropriate protections for that is certainly something we can try to address, again, in our decision.
I think we need written recourse. Yes. I mean, because once they're gone and they've made their millions, we're left with it, okay, all of us. The other thing is, I guess I was thinking about when you build a home and you dig a basement, where does all that dirt go? Is that required to be removed so that the resulting level of height of these homes isn't higher than the surrounding neighborhood, so that all the runoff goes into these people's properties, goes onto the road, goes down the street, and floods us out and floods our neighbor out, and goes into Little Pond ultimately. So these are just factors that, for our protection, this is all well and good right now, but these are considerations that we have to think about 5, 10, 20 years down the road.
Well, we probably can get you an answer to where the excavated
They have to-
material goes.
they have
Well,
to-
and I think the real question is the height, the resulting height, the
Are
same?
they changing the
or
grade
higher?
on the
Yes,
site?
exactly.
Okay.
Okay, so those are some things. But I think the key thing too is just to make sure, as the board, representing us, the taxpayers, that we're not violating the Massachusetts State Department of Environmental Protection.
Well, there is
CMRs.
Again, there is, apparently, the Conservation Commission is addressing this
Okay.
because, not because of local regulations, but because of the issues
State.
with state regulations.
Right. Okay, so maybe that's more appropriate at that meeting.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they will make a recommendation, which we will also consider.
And so I guess, again, the other thing, the key thing to me too with the water in the bay is the other chemicals. It's not just rainwater, that's not filtering through a virgin forest. It's the fact that it's going off asphalt, it's going off construction materials, it's
As it
going
is
off
now.
pavement into Little Pond.
Right. I think we understand that issue, and that's been raised.
I have a qualifying question.
Okay, let me see if the applicant has an answer to the issue of where the excavated material goes, and whether they're gonna change the grade on the site.
Yeah, it'll be used on site. Obviously, there will be some grade changes on site to build the road. But as part of the drainage study, we do have to show that we do not impact, or we do not increase runoff from the site. So the grading does affect that, so that's why we have to oversize our drainage, infiltrate that water in those 2 stormwater basins, have dry wells, have, those type of controls, so.
Okay, any estimate of how much that,
I could probably get that. for
okay,
you. I don't
that would
have
be
it
nice. I
off
would
the top
think that would be appropriate to include in the materials.
Clarifying question.
Just, you're looking for just the changes in grade? that-
Changes in grade and, maybe net amount of fill that you're
Materials
adding.
off-site.
Materials that you're adding.
Following up on that clarifying question.
Go ahead, Jim.
For the engineer, is it too early to get like a preliminary topographic of the grades, the topography?
It's all in the plans.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed that. The other thing,
It's all in the plans.
for the engineer is you're designing for a 100-year storm. What is the standard for development?
We typically analyze the 1 year, the 2 year. I think Falmouth requires the 25-year, 50-year, and 100-year. So we have to analyze each one of those storms and show pre and post it all.
So you're up to the 100-year storm?
Up to the 100-year storm. Yep, that's the state and most local requirements.
That's all in that book, and it's also in the
Yeah,
file.
I think you're trying to educate the public too. The streets and the
Well, they can
houses
come
don't
in
meet
and
the
review the
25-year
file.
storm runoff calculations.
Okay, let's see, other comments? Yep.
We will.
Joe May, Precinct 9, I'm a member of the Affordable Housing Committee. I'm also going to have a hat on from for St. Vincent de Paul Society in East Falmouth. The Affordable Housing Committee liked this project because the proximity to the shopping centers, retail services, doctors' offices. If you put a house out in Hatchville, the person has to drive quite far to go to Shaw's or Stop and Shop. A drive from here to Stop and Shop is a pretty quick trip. So that there's a ecological benefit of the people driving from this neighborhood to their daily errands have a much quicker trip, spend less time burning up gas. I would like to think that everybody would walk to shopping and stuff like that, but Falmouth is a car-centric town. From St. Vincent de Paul Society, we help out a whole range of people from poor to relatively wealthy, but burdened by their real estate. We have oftentimes a married couple, children have moved away from Falmouth, they're in an $800,000 house. They want to downgrade. They want to get out of the big house into something smaller, something more centrally located. There's just nothing in town to downgrade to. They find a lack of supply. And a project like this may end up dealing a bit of supply to this demand, where they can get out of their much larger house and into a smaller house. A much larger house being bought by someone else who wants to move to family. The expectation, I see these people that the only kids in their family are the grandkids or the great-grandkids. So I might expect to see that this won't be a very kid-centric neighborhood. I would love to see a kid-centric neighborhood. We do need that too. But this would be something I think that some of my St. Vincent de Paul clients who are burdened by their current real estate could find this as a solution, sell their expensive house to who can afford it, and move into something smaller, easily maintained. I mean, mowing these lawns, it's going to be a piece of cake. You know? And but you know, I think that this does serve some of that need. And as I say, I'm speaking in favor of this project. I do like this. It's so close to shopping and things that I can see it being a benefit to people who could not spend a whole lot of time driving on our roads and making traffic.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Okay. 2 minutes.
Chris Bernard, 86 Hudson Street. Just curious, I mean, obviously I understand there has to be an economic reason for doing this and something favorable, but I just was wondering, what is the minimum type of plan that you could come, have you thought about a minimum plan that wouldn't be so evasive?
To the board.
And talk to the board
Again,
about
yeah,
that?
please address your comments to us.
Sure. So I was wondering if the applicant had thought about or has submitted a different plan at any point. I know they went from 30 down to 28 or something, but through the back and forth with the town and the committees and hearing different things, you know, is there any kind of plan B in place?
Okay, let's see if they have an answer.
Yeah, I mean, this is a plan that makes economic sense. This person, we've submitted our total pro forma to the town, and with all the numbers, and it doesn't show making $3.5 million. Be great if it did. But, you know, this is a plan that works economically. The real estate businesses, this other person was saying, a lot of things can happen in the real estate business. You know, the market's good and then the market's not good, and but on every affordable home that we build here, which there are 7, and this is all in the pro forma that we submitted, you lose $200,000. So that's $1.4 million. So we have looked at this every which way, and it's got to work economically, not only for us, but Mass Housing, who evaluated it, and, you know, 28 homes we think is right around, you know, where you need to make it work economically.
Okay, all right. We're getting towards the end here, so.
Just a couple of issues.
Name
Dave Wozniacki,
for the
32
record.
Lucerne Avenue, just south of the intended project. A couple of areas of concern of mine obviously have been mentioned by previous speakers. One is density and the character of our neighborhood that's going to be dramatically changed by that. The gentleman also mentioned the fact that this was his idea of a quaint Cape Cod village, I think he said, and I find that hard to fathom personally. Setbacks. The lawyer mentioned initially that he didn't want to get into setbacks, but we did address several of the setback issues. A 2-foot setback on the side of the garage is one thing. Setback from the front yard, I had seen somewhere it printed it was going to be a 10-foot setback. Now, is that measured from the sidewalk? Or how far?
From the property line.
And the property line commences where?
The right-of-way.
wherever the road
Property is.
right-of-way ends.
Is the sidewalk on that property or on the?
The sidewalk's probably not.
No, there's not, no.
So from the sidewalk to the person's front yard is now going to be down to 6 feet perhaps, right?
No, no.
No.
The sidewalk is in the road right-of-way.
In the road right away, okay. The aspect of fire safety and such cluster homing, building in such close proximity to one another. I've recently experienced friends who had a home with a 25-foot space between their home and a adjacent neighboring garage, and both houses burned down as a result of one. I can just imagine what a fire would do in such close proximity here. I think that's something that seriously has to be addressed. The other question I had regarding this diagram, is this to scale, the way these driveways are covering the lot?
You're looking at a landscape plan right there.
Is that to scale?
I think it says it on the bottom.
I mean, I've recently had my property surveyed, and the surveyor took into all impervious surfaces on the lot, including stepping stones in the garden, including brick walkways, and absolutely everything. Lot coverage by the home is one thing, but the impervious surfaces are another. The material of the driveway, is that going to be
That's
asphalt?
a reasonable question, and asphalt?
So I
They
mean,
call it impervious.
I'm not sure what they would apply to waive the lot coverage to be for as far as impervious surfaces is concerned. But I mean, are we talking 70% lot coverage by impervious surfaces?
60%, I believe it is. It's all in the file.
Yeah.
People can come in and
There's-
review the file
There's a
and see
range
all
of,
this.
I mean, depending on the particular house, they've given us a schedule, which you're welcome, again, to come in and see. We've asked them to modify it a little bit because they've included in the total impervious surface some things that should be in the building area. So I think they're going to make a modification of that, and we'll get a corrected version. And that includes, according to their testimony, not only what is initially proposed for construction, but also the additional construction if someone elected to build a garage or a sunroom and so forth. So there is a breakdown of that. And, you know, it's running on the order of 50%, I would say,
For house coverage?
for everything.
For everything. Okay.
50 to 60.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, is this something new?
Yes.
All right, let's make this the last comment for
Yes.
tonight.
Somebody else wants to go, so I've already spoken, so.
Yeah.
There is more hearings.
Because there's going to be at least one, and I'm going to guess perhaps more than one, additional hearing, and we'll get more information. You folks have raised some excellent points and asked for information that I think we can try to get for you all. And certainly the board now has a great familiarity with the project as well, so. But if you feel the need to make one more comment, let's make this the swan song for tonight.
For the record again, Edward Jalowick, 54 Alma Road. I think, Mr. Foreman, you've raised a very good point that needs further elaboration. Not only do the sheds, garages, and any other sidewalks have to be included in coverage, but also there was mention in some of these sketches of patios, perhaps. Those are impervious surfaces. That also needs to be included. So there needs to be a further clarification there. In the submission, the developer mentioned 60% total site coverage by buildings and impervious surfaces. So 60 is a big number.
So I'll just read to you from the engineer, Scott Schluter's comments, and he specifically said, the site plans indicate potential sheds, three-season rooms, and garages. These impervious surfaces do not appear to be accounted for in the drainage calculations. And I don't know if you've made any additional corrections in the drainage calculations to,
We can discuss that with the town engineer, but those areas are included in our.
okay, so please get that cleared up.
Yes.
Okay, and lastly, just for the record, again, going by the developer's submission, the financial figures run something like this: $13.7 million gross revenue.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you because under 40B, we really, it's not our job to vet the financials as the zoning board. We confine our consideration to local
Mass housing.
concerns and, you know, how this project fits in with our town.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I think that's it for, if the board has any further comments at this time, questions, something for the applicant to really come back with.
Just a comment regarding, I just want to make sure that the information in the application is actually matching the information on the plan, because there were a lot of things that were said tonight regarding measurements or widths, and they are different from the application. And I just had one quick question on the conceptual landscape plan on the Alma Road side. What looks like a buffer seems to appear on the adjacent properties. Is that something just there for the look of the plan, or does that actually exist?
I'm not sure what,
So all that green space on the Alma Road side?
Here?
No, back further?
Back-
Right where the houses are on Elma Road, the actual houses on the street.
Randy, back further.
Yeah. So that green strip, does that actually exist? Because it seems it's on the neighboring properties.
yeah, I mean, there are some, we haven't plotted all the trees, but there are some trees in their backyard that are not on this.
Because it appears just for the, it's a nice looking
No,
plan,
we didn't-
but it gives the appearance of almost that there's a buffer that I just don't think exists.
No, I think.
So maybe you could just
That's
check.
not your buffer, that's their buffer. Hasn't,
Yes.
they could decide to cut all those trees down
Yeah,
tomorrow.
that's on, Alan, that's on our, this was surveyed on property on Alma Street.
Yeah, okay.
Could you clarify for the audience
And-
what section we go by when we review a 40B?
What section?
In the zoning bylaws. There's half a dozen criteria.
No, we
We go
go
by section 40B.
Chapter 4.
Mass-
Chapter 4, that's what I mean, so people would
That's right.
understand.
It's
Mass
state-
general laws,
state
Mass general
statute.
laws.
Mass general laws, right, it's not.
and 760 CMR 56.
Okay, that was more for,
Right. And so that basically empowers the developer who's coming in, seeking a certain number of affordable units. In exchange for that affordability, to build at higher density and circumvent some of the local regulations.
thank you.
Just to kind of jump off what Robert was saying, I think maybe it would be nice, from my perspective, to see some additional landscaping to the rear of the structures. I don't think we've talked about that, but I know you said you're proposing it in the front, but not the rear. I think it would be, especially along that Alma Road side. And the other thing, and I know I mentioned this, but the more I sit here, the more and it might be because I'm a condo attorney, I think it might make sense to condominiumize this, and you'd be seeking, I think, less waivers from our board, and you wouldn't be on 4,000 square foot lots at that point either, so you wouldn't be creating as many non-conforming, even if they're lawfully non-conforming lots. Because right now, as proposed, it's 28 lots, substantial number of those which are significantly undersized, and I just think that there's probably a better way to do it in terms of still protecting some zoning interest and setbacks and things like that. I just would request another look at that.
Not to step on Peter's toes, but you are a condominium attorney.
So I'm not sure.
Change the
In case
plan.
you're looking for someone to
I'm
handle
not
that
sure
for
I
you.
understand your comment about the backyard. I think what we had envisioned was that people were gonna put their own stamp on the backyard.
Yeah, I know that's what you said, and I said I would like to see more buffering along the property lines. You don't have to do it, I'm just saying I would like to see more buffering along the property line.
You know, in a way, it protects your own property owners, because if someone on Alma Road decides to, you know, check out what's going on next door, there's nothing keeping them from cutting down their own that buffer. Okay, so I think for now, we want to continue this. Sari, is there a
Pick a
time and
date.
day?
How much time do you believe you're going to need to answer all the concerns and questions and get information to us a week in advance?
Makes sense to set up a, I mean, we've got Christmas coming up.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be December.
No, early January or?
Yeah, that's probably.
Let me also ask the board, if, there was an interesting proposal. I think drainage is potentially an important
Oh.
issue on this lot. And the question was raised by one of the commenters about getting an independent assessment of the drainage, hiring a consultant. Is that something that the board feels would be worthwhile?
I think it would be a benefit, just to have some outside eyes take a look at it and just give us their opinion of drainage calculations and the setup, just because it's directly on the pond and it could affect.
You know, I think it's a
Main
valid
drainage.
point that this is a pond that we have invested heavily in to protect. And, you know, the 100-year storm guidance, I think in the last several years, we've had a bunch of 100-year storms, so.
If we're going to the independent stormwater analysis, I think some of the concern was how it would flow underground to the pond. It might not be more water,
It's their
but
review.
it might be part of the analysis for stormwater analysis to determine if there's plumettes, in general, is it gonna, which way the groundwater's gonna flow.
Well, you know, it could be more water because you're removing a bunch of trees that during the summer evapotranspire and carry off half the water that lands.
So what's the board's
I guess if we want those details, we should bring it
Move it
down. My experience is evapotranspiration on a lot like this is not significant.
Well, but there you go, but it was before when you had
Yes.
a forest there.
What's the board's consensus on getting an engineer? Could we
So
move
what's the, let's just quickly,
Or
the
really-
consensus.
I would go with an independent review, I think it's.
Yes.
Paul?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I would, and I think it should be tied to whatever they're gonna submit, not
Yeah.
submit it now.
Right, I agree with that.
Yeah. I'm in favor.
I'm not a voter, but I in favor, but I'd like to see.
Okay. And me
So
as-
we don't have
me
other
as-
questions later.
All right, so we'd like to get some outside consulting on
Mr. Chairman?
On the engineering, yep.
That's certainly fine, as you said, that is allowable, no protest whatsoever. We actually usually find it very helpful. Just in terms of time, although, yes, it would be January. Do you set up administratively so that the board doesn't have to meet again to authorize whoever you hire? I'm just trying to think ahead.
The board usually asks me to get 3 different opinions, or, excuse me, thank you, and make a determination, at least that's what's happened in the past. If they want to weigh in, we do have to have a meeting.
So do you want a formal vote authorizing you to do that?
And any type of amount you want to go for, because they are going to pay for it.
Then let's go for the math.
Sorry, Peter.
No.
Generally, I don't
have
see it.
no-
I went ahead.
I'm not qualified to make an estimate for what that would be.
I can't imagine going on previous, I can't imagine it would be more than $8,000. And that's going on previous consultants.
So up to
8,000.
Want to go 10?
Well, it has to be supplemented if it goes over, so.
Correct.
I think that's fair. I was going to say
Okay.
probably 8, quite candidly, but, that's fair.
8,000?
Because it's on the deposit, it has to be supplemented if you're right.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so shall we have a motion to that effect?
To what effect?
The effect to authorize you to get quotes
And
up to,
do you want to review, or are you going to allow me?
I'm going to allow you.
I think
Is
that's.
the board going to allow to pick?
Because you go through the attorney and you go through Jennifer Patet.
No,
It's a contract, outside contract, needs procurement requirements.
No, it doesn't. It's a quote. This is what I do. You submit a check for $8,000. I immediately contact 3 to 5 engineering firms and get quotes. And pick one,
Okay?
based on credentials.
So Sari, for right now, my only question is whether you need a formal board vote authorizing you to
You
do
do,
that?
I do, please.
Okay.
I will move to authorize Suri to obtain quotes for stormwater engineering review on this project, and further authorize her to determine who is appropriate to engage, up to $8,000.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And aye.
Thank
Okay,
you.
So, there you go.
Send me the check.
So date?
All right, so, and then we're back to scheduling
date.
the next hearing.
I was just gonna say, I just had some thoughts in terms of if, and I don't know if this is even feasible, if they have a revised plan or calculations, I mean, I guess we'll see how long it takes to get proposals back. I don't know if we can get that all in before the next hearing, right? If there was also a way that we could try to
I
do
will
that.
start working on it tomorrow and ask for proposals back. It's something that, this doesn't take as long as other things do, because they're going to come in and they're going to review what's before us. And if they have any questions, I'll pass it on.
And if I may, and of course, I've worked this area before, we can certainly try to expedite that, what we want to do to get any revisions to the peer review out of the board, as soon as we have them. So it's a good point, we'll certainly work towards that.
So so some of the issues, I think, just to review, sight distance from the turn there on Alma Road coming north and west, I guess, to that intersection. Should that intersection be relocated further to the west?
They've mentioned grading different things. I think Peter's taken
Yeah.
notes. Is there anything specific?
Well, I think a lot of the concerns raised by the engineering
Right.
memo, which was very good, thank you, Scott, would be helpful.
Okay, so how about January 18th? Is that date amenable or to all the parties?
Seems good to me.
I mean, Peter's gonna be on vacation, I don't know who.
25th?
How about the 25th?
I have another hearing.
I say let's just do it the 18th, and I don't see any.
I'm comfortable with that, I would tell my
I'm trying to
client.
deal with eight.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still up with everything, we understand that, but it's mostly gonna be the technical things, hopefully with peer review and more reporting on the engineering. And, I do have enough council partners who get necessary to come, so
Okay.
I think it's better to move along.
It's gonna have to be earlier.
Do you want to start it at 5:30 or 6:30? Because we do have further hearings
Before
that
the
night.
hearings, we'll do 5:30.
One day of the week is that, I'm sorry.
That's,
They're always
everything's
on
on
Thursdays.
Thursdays.
I would prefer 5:30, but that might not be convenient to other members on the board.
All right, 5:30.
Kimberly, is that okay with you as well?
I will try to get here. Usually I don't have an issue, but today it's tight, so.
All right, well, again, we have
We can
hearings
take some
that
out
are,
of order.
have they been?
Yeah, no, they're 6:30, but that's okay, I'll
They
get
haven't
here
been
for
advertised yet.
5:30.
Okay, the 18th hasn't been advertised
Oh,
yet, so
okay.
we can do all the other hearings at 5:30 and then accommodate them after.
I'll do my best.
Makes sense.
Is that okay? That way, great. So let's change that to 5:30 now before we
Right.
forget.
I will make a
forget.
motion to continue application 9017 to January 18th, 2017 at 5:30 here in Town Hall.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded by Kim and Ed. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now, our meeting is continuing, so as you leave, please move
Leave
away from the
quietly.
entrance so we can take up our other business.
I like the keychain. I like the keychain. They keep staring at me during the meeting. Every time I look over, it's like looking at whatever it is.
A fuzzy.
Or fuzzy keeps looking at me funny.
We can ask,
Oh, yes.
but we cannot require.
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Peter. Peter.
See, get a job off of that.
That's
This is
right.
a lucrative thing.
Okay, let's,
I'm gonna
minutes,
have to ask her to recuse herself.
come on. Ken, minutes,
Take home.
But don't
Yes.
lose it.
and bring them back at the meeting.
Is there a motion?
Yeah.
It's been in your box.
Well, yeah,
Oh
to
my
review the
God.
minutes.
You
Oh,
can use it as a.
well, the next item on the agenda here is review of the minutes, November 16th, 2017. Does everyone had an opportunity,
Yep.
who was here on November 16th, which I don't believe was me, right?
I was
No, you and Kimberly were not here, so
So
it's up
neither one of
together.
us can voice,
So no-
I moved to approve, I think I was.
Second. Moved and
So
seconded.
Jerry and Paul,
Yep.
Did Paul leave?
all those in favor?
aye. No, Paul's right here.
With 2 recusals, Ken.
Oh, yes, we recused.
And I recused.
Yeah.
I didn't say aye. did
Yes,
I?
you
Oh, I
did.
did. Oh, I'm sorry.
But wasn't that the target
Wait,
range?
wait.
I thought you left
Wait,
before
that
the end.
wasn't the, that wasn't
Paul.
Gunther. No,
So ask Sheree.
that wasn't Gunther.
I was there,
Oh, you were there, okay.
yeah.
He was there in the beginning, and he sat through the, well, okay,
Jerry,
we
we
have to
might
do
need
it
to ask those
separately.
guys to
Millbury.
move.
You guys just approved Millbury.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
4 of you approve the gun.
You've got it.
Aye.
Who made a motion to approve the guns?
Motion to approve guns.
The gun club, okay, first and
Or
second.
guns. Either way.
Shoot 'em up.
Okay. The second thing is an administrative approval request that you go through every year with Walmart for the trailers.
Is it the same
Big
number in the
trailers?
same location?
It's not the same location,
Oh,
and
I see now.
I met with Mark, how long ago did he come in the office?
About a week ago.
Says 4 trailers.
There's 4 trailers, right now they are in the wrong location, I've asked him to move it, I took these pictures.
So that would be no.
Last week.
Where'd they put them?
Just the other day.
What's wrong with where they put them?
Well, the trailers belong over here, and then you've got these, you see them in conjunction with the building. So I really want the board to really state, this is where they go. Right now, they're over here, and they're facing this way. And I've told him this is where they belong, we gave him a map. So,
Oops.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Is there a reason we selected that, I'm assuming?
it's out of the way.
Yeah.
It's out
It's
of
all
the
the
way,
way
it's the
further away.
Okay, so
furthest
public
away.
safety and things like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
We got a lot of semis going through.
You
there,
know,
a
I
lot of
just wanted,
buses,
yeah.
A lot of things, and you can see it's right here in the main area. So normally they're over here where they
Well, I don't want
are.
to be Scrooge-like, but yeah.
Screw.
But- And also,
Oh,
probably,
yeah.
maybe with the condition that they come back for a full hearing next year.
Well, that's, I
If they
was,
can't.
That might be
yeah,
better.
I was going,
I told him
Yeah?
that they're in the wrong
Because-
place,
Okay.
and they were there.
So move or come in for a full
We
hearing.
had to
and they're
contact
there
them.
even before we approve.
We had to contact them once I saw the trailers in October, by the
I
way.
don't want to have to call Sam.
So do you want to approve this based on moving them to where the plan shows? And do you want to make a condition that they come back for a full hearing next year or not?
When do they have to remove them by?
January 15th,
And they usually adhere to that?
yes.
And when are they supposed to put them there, or they're supposed to come before
In
us?
the past
before,
few
right?
years, it's been the first week in November, I believe.
But they don't come in before them, they're supposed to?
They're supposed to.
Sure, let's make them come in for a
I
full hearing.
think so.
All right, so that'll be a condition.
All right, so who's making this?
What's next?
I will move that we administratively approve, I don't have the number before me, there's no,
104.17.
104.17, with the condition that they comply, move the trailers this year so that they comply with the plan, that we have approved, and.
Previously.
Previously, and also the condition that next year they come before us for a full hearing prior to installation of the trailer.
So they should come in, they should apply approximately in
We
August.
can't have that door.
Oh, we can't have that
The
door
door
closed?
shut?
How'd that close?
I might have shut it by mistake,
Oh, no, it's against open meeting.
not if
Go
it's
ahead.
unlocked.
Okay, I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And aye. Okay, so that was moved by Kim, seconded by Ed again, right? Okay, So the next item in the open meeting here is board review and discussion of proposed draft bylaw for solar photovoltaics.
Brian Curry asked me to pass this on to the board for comments. I did send it out to you via email.
I got, oh, yeah, thank you. You put it in there.
Thank you.
Use in the trailer. Yeah.
So any comments? This is something that they're proposing. Do you have any issues with it?
So is this now under special permit in agricultural districts? Is that what?
It's not allowed.
No. What I'm asking is 24038.0 now a special permit in
No.
ag districts?
No, there is no 24038.0.
If it passes.
Is that what's being proposed here, that this is a special permit use?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yes.
So this should
I
be proposed
misunderstood what
on.
you were asking.
Yeah.
It's late.
Subject to all the same dimensional requirements as it would be for structures, right? Is that the?
Yeah, that should be, yeah. I agree.
Does that come, what
Yeah,
sec-
because it
that
would
comes
be a
up?
structure,
Right. I think
basically.
Yeah, it's consistent with N, certainly, which
Yeah.
is in agricultural A and AA districts, only wind energy systems.
Yeah.
It seems to be.
So can you send those comments to me via email so I can
Or just
forward
jot
them on to the
down.
planning board?
So what do we want to say, subject to,
You can jot it down and give it to me and I'll,
Right.
Yeah.
subject to dimensional,
Well, I think that, is that,
How about the whole special permit requirements?
I don't think. that
well,
you
it's
have
under
to
the
s-
special
yeah.
permit.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you have to state, I just was
Okay.
asked.
Okay.
I mean, maybe it would.
of
Is this a
structures,
runaround for Lawrence and Lynch?
e.g. setback,
Can't say that
etc.
I realize that. It's because it's not allowed anywhere.
Yeah, no, I mean, at town
Except
meeting
in
floor,
light
this came
industrial.
up, and they were hoping to get a
Right.
special zoning, and they didn't get it, and it seems to,
Well, it's only allowed in light industrial, and light industrial is very,
and they were creating light industrial C.
over there, very specific as to what you can do in
Then
the,
everyone was worried that
area.
light industrial, that they would get permission to do this, and they put up a bunch
Right.
of warehouses.
so.
Okay.
I'll take any comments that you can jot down or email to me, Mr. Foreman.
Keep up with this one.
All right, anything, okay, so that takes care of that. Procedural rules and policies, nothing?
Hello.
We should probably have I think probably a meeting.
Well, don't we do,
A workshop, we should be doing a workshop and discussing this
yeah,
That'd be on a Saturday.
and other
night.
things. Yeah, Ken offered to have it in his backyard.
In the winter?
Middle of winter.
yeah, I'll wait till it snows.
You could be
Sure,
all
if,
sit in the
I
parking lot.
realize the board is very busy, and December, we've got 3 in a row, in January, we've got 3 in a row, and we've got a couple
Yeah.
controversials, but if there's a Saturday that we can do this and get through it, because we really need to change some of those things that we've talked about.
These are the procedures, just the procedures, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I think, like, the workshop,
Yeah, well, the typical workshop, but also discuss the procedures during that.
yes.
okay.
We do have a new board member, I don't believe, who's been to our workshop.
This is when we bring
Do you
all
get
the nice
snacks?
pastries.
I don't think I've been to the workshop, have I? You would have missed me.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think we were, because we brought in
Yeah, you had
food,
to bring in
breakfast.
food,
Yeah.
remember?
If it's food,
Well,
I
that was with
remember.
Mark Bobrowski. We've
Yes.
done some that are just
Oh, yeah,
regular.
yeah, that was strictly 40B, so I
We
think,
actually talked about having another one of those kind of educational things.
Yes,
Right.
we did.
I forget what about.
yeah, let me know, because
Or what about?
the FinCom actually supported us in increasing our budget for that, so.
Good.
So
For
the issue is, what
training for
would
the
people
board.
like to know more about that we don't know enough about?
Will you think about that, okay?
You would be the best judge.
You've
sir.
been asking us
What do
for
we need?
suggested agenda items.
By the way, December 13th, I need to know who's going to be in attendance.
I hope to be.
And you sent me an email, you sent me an email, and you sent me an email. So it is somebody from the state talking about this. It's not Attorney Duffy.
Well, that's not on here.
Yeah, so what is it, December 13th?
Excuse me, that's a board update, okay?
So what is it?
December 13th.
Yeah, I know
from
you sent us an email.
It's townwide.
It's the conflict of interest laws in the state.
Oh.
We have to
I
sit through
did
that?
something else that night.
It's only an hour and a half.
Oh, my.
I
Do I
would
have
think
to
you'd know
attend?
about it. No, I'm not gonna be
You're
there.
not mandated, I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I
He
might-
he
I might
requested,
miss
Attorney
that
Duffy requested
No,
that
deal
I
with it
invite the
through
board.
Dartmouth,
I
you
do
know?
have a conflict.
Of interest.
That's why we want you there.
I have a lack of interest in it. Ooh, well, because Dartmouth does it.
Yeah,
Already had it.
I have to do it for him. Okay.
Okay.
Correspondence, board updates,
That was it.
future agenda items? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.